At the start of Season 2, the head of Vought, a guy named Stan Edgar, is going through the contract that they're proposed to the U.S. government to keep the Supes in the Department of Defense. The Supes will continue to battle the super terrorists, and one such terrorist is a guy named Nakeem. He's the terrorist that we saw at the end of Season 1, and Black Noir was sent on a mission to kill him, and he does so successfully. And Homelander makes this announcement to the world at the Translucent Memorial/funeral. The only two people from the Seven that are there are him and Starlight. But the memorial service is a huge deal. It's sold out, there's merchandise, there's people outside. It is truly a worldwide event. So that's what the Seven is up to. Now the group that includes Billy, Huey, Mother's Milk, Frenchie, and Kimiko, they're in a little bit of a different situation. Billy is nowhere to be found. And the rest of that group is holding out in the basement of a Cash for Gold store that is also being used by a local gang to distribute guns, drugs, you name it. And they have to all lay low because they're wanted in connection with the murder of Madeline Stillwell. So they're really not supposed to leave the basement, but that doesn't stop Huey. He makes an excuse that he's going out to get supplies, but in reality, he's going to meet up with Annie/Starlight. And the two meet up on the subway. And the first thing he asks her is, was she followed? Did she snap the SIM card from the burner cell phone? He is extremely paranoid, but for good reason. Although Annie doesn't think it's a good reason, she's concerned about his mental well-being at this point because he looks like shit. He hands her over a piece of paper of a guy that's going to help them take down Vought. He works at Vought Labs. The only issue is Annie actually knows him from her Capes for Christ days. And Huey asks, is that going to be an issue? And she says, well, I can't really make it an issue. The conversation then turns to Annie's dating life because she was spotted in an award show with a movie star. And Huey's inquiring as to if this was set up by the PR firm or if she's actually dating him. Because Huey still very much wants to get back with Annie, but Annie still feels betrayed about what Huey did to her. So right now, they only have a working relationship, and that is to take down Vought. He then heads back to the basement where, unfortunately, they're still heavily wanted. I mean, they've gone all out. They even have Chris Hansen doing a story on it with a bad reenactment of Billy Butcher taking out Madeline Stillwell and giving an update that her baby was found 13 miles away. So unfortunately, laying low hasn't worked for the group, and they want to run. But Huey says, no, we shouldn't run. We should continue to try to take down Vought. All we need to do is get some Compound V, take it to the local news, and boom, they're done. The problem is, they don't have Compound V. And Huey suggests that they get Starlight to help. And Mother's Milk freaks out at that suggestion because Huey getting in contact with Starlight could jeopardize everybody's lives. Mother's Milk makes the case that she's being heavily monitored right now, and you just texting her could have gotten us all killed. And Mother's Milk is just very stressed out because he's sick of living in a basement. He wants to see his family. Now, Annie has taken that piece of paper that was given to her by Huey and gone to the address on it. And she finds that Supe that she knew from Bible camp who goes by the name Gecko. And he goes by the name Gecko because he can regenerate appendages. And with that little skill, he ends up selling himself as like a S&M hooker to people that want to chop off limbs. So Annie stands outside and takes a video of one such guy cutting off Gecko's arm. She then acts like she just happens to run into him at a diner afterwards, and the two start catching up about their Bible camp days. And he lets her know that he works at the labs in Vought, and he obviously is well aware of who she is and how far she's come. And then she asks for a favor. She says, I need Compound V. And he plays dumb, acting like he doesn't know what it is, but she says, here we go. Another lie. He explains to her how difficult it's going to be for him to get Compound V because he's such a low man on a totem pole. He's really nothing more than a lab rat. But that's when she blackmails him with the video. And with no other choice, he's gonna have to help. It's kind of sad though. He says, I thought we were friends. And she says, no. We were nothing. Now, while Annie was blackmailing Gecko, the leader of the Seven, Homelander, has gone into Madeline's old office, which is being completely redone. And he has a really weird moment with her old breast milk, but he's interrupted by Ashley, who walks in, and she starts thanking him profusely for getting her this job. She then lets him know that she thinks she's found a perfect replacement for Translucent, and he's downstairs. She asks Homelander, do you want to meet him? And he excitedly says, yeah, absolutely. So they head downstairs to the gym, and there he is, a superhero by the name Blind Spot. And he's called Blind Spot because he's actually legally blind. Think Daredevil. He's extremely accurate with weapons and such, and he's excited to meet Homelander. And at first, Homelander acts like he's excited to meet him as well, saying that he's the real hero because of how much he's overcome. But he asks Ashley and Blind Spot, just a quick question, what happens if I do this? And he bashes both of his eardrums in. And his Blind Spot is writhing in pain on the ground with blood pouring out of his head. And Ashley, who is mortified, Homelander looks at her and says, you really thought I would let a crippled into the Seven? Have you lost your mind? The only reason you have this job is to be my eyes and ears for corporate. I'm the boss. I make the rules. You are nothing more than a mole to me. Do you understand that? And then he walks out, laying down the law. Now that night, back in the Cash for Gold basement, Grouper's just trying to kill time when all of a sudden one of the gangbangers comes in and his arm is completely jacked up. It's broken in every place. It is mangled. And Mother's Milk, who has kind of been the doctor for this group, says, there's nothing I can do. You got to take him to the hospital. Gangbangers are reluctant to do that, obviously. And through loose translation, you find out what happened to him. Unbeknownst to Frenchie, the gangbangers weren't just smuggling in drugs and weapons, they were also smuggling in people, which pisses off Frenchie. But while they were doing this, one of the guys that was being smuggled in picked up the boat that they just arrived in and threw it on this other guy. So the group heads to the dock, and sure enough, there's the boat just lying on the road. They look at the security camera footage, and luckily, it hasn't gotten to the cops yet, but it is really bad because they basically have a soup terrorist running amok in New York City. And Kimiko goes near the boat, and she thinks she knows who it is because she's found an origami crane. And when they get back to the basement, she's trying to tell Frenchie this, but she's just learning English, and Frenchie doesn't really understand. The only word she can type out is boy, and she keeps pointing to it. Frenchie wants to call Billy, but Huey is totally against calling Billy. He thinks they can do it himself. And his bright suggestion is to get in touch with Raina, the deputy director of the CIA, even though they're all wanted by the police. And with no real bright ideas, they try to get in touch with her. So while the group tries to get in touch with Raina, Homelander and Queen Maeve have gone off to film a commercial that they're going to use to drum up public support to keep the Supes in the Department of Defense. But while doing it, this other Supe shows up named Stormfront, who is live streaming the entire thing. And Stormfront seems to not give a fuck. She's pointing out that they're not actually in the middle of a war zone. They're on a set. The one soldier was in NCIS Los Angeles. And Ashley doesn't know where the hell she came from. And while Queen Maeve has heard of her, both Queen Maeve and Homelander are like, what are you doing here? And that's when Stormfront reveals that she is the newest member of the Seven, and the boys up top just wanted her to say hello. And Ashley immediately, seeing what happened, a blind spot, looks at Homelander saying, I had no idea, and that's because it went over her head. This was done by Stan Edgar. And because it's being live streamed, Homelander can't exactly freak out at her. But the first thing he does when he's done filming that commercial is go and talk to Stan. And at first he tries to strong-arm him, telling him that his contract is up at the end of the year and it's not going to look good to shareholders if a superhero company is without the most famous superhero in the world. But Stan lets him know that we're not in the superhero business, we're in the pharmaceutical business. And Homelander isn't the most valuable asset to Vought. The most valuable asset is Compound V. But then Homelander had to go act like a child, spreading Compound V to terrorists around the world just to get his boys defense and that fat paycheck. But in doing so, he might have just cost the company everything. And now because of it, the FDA knows about Compound V, and it's only a matter of time before the public does too. So Homelander isn't really in a position to start making demands because everyone's trying to clean up his mess. And that includes who goes into the Seven and who doesn't. And Homelander is furious. He just walks out. He does end up flying to Becca Butcher's house, knocking on the door, and she's really shocked to see him, saying, what are you doing here? And he says, just came to visit my son. Now, back with the group, the good thing is they've been able to track down Raina, and they meet up with her, and she asks if they've heard from Billy, and the answer is no. She then asks, do you think Billy could have actually killed Madeline Stillwell? And Mother's Milk says, well, I would hope not, but I don't know, I wasn't there. Mother's Milk then asks for an update on his family, and she gives him one, and Huey asks, is there any way that Mother's Milk can see his family? And Raina says, well, let's check out this thing with this super terrorist, and then we'll go from there. So Mother's Milk gives a detailed description on the super terrorists that they saw in the security camera footage. And it's as if a light bulb just went off in Raina's head, because she's been trying to figure out how to take down Vought for a while, figuring that it's an inside job, and she thinks she's figured it out now with this information. But all of a sudden, she gets a bloody nose, and her head explodes. And as soon as that happens, the group gets in the van and frantically drives off, freaking out at who just killed Raina. The group gets back to the Cash for Gold basement. They start cleaning themselves up, and Mother's Milk lets them know that that wasn't meant for them, because if it was, none of them would have heads at the moment. He figures that somebody was around waiting for her to say the wrong thing, and if she did, they'd kill her. And while they don't know if it's Vought, if it was, they just killed the deputy director of the CIA. Huey then gets a phone call from Starlight, who lets him know there's great news. He's good to get me Compound V in the next day or two. Then we just take it to the local news and we take him down. But now, since what happened with Raina, Huey's worried for her. He wants her to be safe. So he tells her, ho, slow down. Let's just take this thing slow. And she can't figure out why. And she wants to know if anything happened. And he says no, but she can tell that he's lying. And lying is a big thing for her, so she just hangs up. And as soon as she does, someone gets thrown down the steps. Gangbangers come out with guns drawn, and then all of a sudden, down comes Billy Butcher. And Huey feels kind of betrayed because Frenchie called him, but Frenchie says this isn't a game anymore. We need an actual leader. And Billy looks at Huey and says, you know he's right. We're the most wanted people in the world. Raina's head exploded, and we've got super terrorists, but don't worry, Daddy's home. And then finally, a little update on the Deep. He's still in Sandusky, Ohio, in purgatory, and he is miserable. He's drinking a lot. He's getting arrested. He's being featured on TMZ. But after one such arrest, he gets bailed out by a guy named Eagle the Archer. And Eagle takes him back to his house and lets the Deep crash on his couch. And when the Deep wakes up, it's not just Eagle the Archer there. It's somebody else, a woman named Carol. And Eagle starts talking about when he hit rock bottom and how Carol helped him out of that. But the Deep doesn't think he's hit rock bottom. And the Deep gets up to leave, but Carol says, I think I can help you get back into the 7. And that is something that the Deep is very interested in. And when he turns around, Carol is handing them this book that says Church of the Collective, The New Science of Self-Renewal. Thank you for watching this recap. If you do not see the next one up in the corner right there on the end screen, don't worry, it'll be up shortly. Please consider following the channel. That'd be cool. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you don't, there's a thumbs down button for a reason.